Hello and welcome back to a brand new episode of Survivor Social, the Survivor podcast where we discuss Survivor with a focus on the social elements of the game. My name is Tegwith, and I am, as always, super stoked to have my co-host David with me. David, how are you doing?
I am fantastic, and I'm so excited to dig into this episode. How are you?
Oh, I'm living the dream. But can't wait to talk about this episode with you. I was very lucky and got to go on I guess not the feedback show, but the show that Sorry Now does right after this show, and I got to talk a little bit about the episode with Abraham and Randy. So that was super fun. But I really cannot wait to dive into this episode with you and get really, deep like we usually do. But first and foremost, I do want to know, we got the auction back and we weren't able to talk about the auction because we haven't been on here, just the two of us in a long hot second. So I would love to hear your thoughts on the auction. And I kind of want to give my 2 cents too.
Yeah, I was elated to have the auction back, and although I think that there were tiny suggestions that I would have made to do things differently, overall, I loved the way they handled it. I think they framed it really well. I also love that they gave some throwback footage from previous seasons with auctions that warmed my heart. And yeah, I think it was super fun. My only suggestion, like I said last week, was I wish they didn't say whether or not there would be advantages. So that could have been a little bit more ambiguous because I thought that by the end of the auction, certain players who had the most money each round, if there was a round, they would just throw all of their money so that they could be safe and not lose their vote. So I think that if they had kept it a little bit more ambiguous, it could have been more of an incentive for them to actually potentially play a little riskier. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. That was one of the things that I was thinking about when I saw that was I think that they set this up to where they could bring back advantages anytime. Like I think they fixed it in a way where if advantages were in there, it would add some interest, intrigue. So I totally agree. I really loved it. I was very fortunate enough to go to the fan viewing of it, which was I don't think that is just going to be like a memory that I'm going to have like and just it was just amazing. And so being able to watch the auction after having just met Jeff Probst, or not met, but like seen Jeff Probst, and then watch the auction with so many other like Survivor fans. It was really really cool. And yeah, beggars can be choosers. I'm just happy that the auction is back. Like I'm just like I'm not gonna complain like I normally do about things because I'm just like genuinely so happy that they listened to us. They brought it back because it's just so much. It's such a fun thing, and Ryan and I did a little rewatch of all of the auctions past, which was really fun. We did it on the TikTok live and it was really fun to just kind of get an idea. So we saw that flashback. We were like, oh my God, we saw that. Oh, we saw that. Oh, we had like watched it the night before. So that was kind of silly, but really fun. And it did, when we rewatched them, they did get way less interesting by the end. And so they did obviously need to do something about it. So I'm just, I'm so happy that it's back. But I'm really excited to dig in this episode. As always, before we start, make sure you listeners like and subscribe to Survivor Now on YouTube and Spotify. And if you have any hot takes of your own that you want to, talk about, be heard, if you have a question for us, send us a message on our Instagram at Survivor Socialites or at our email, survivorsocialpod@gmail.com, and we'll read them here. Speaking of which, we do have some questions, which I'm really excited to get into. So let's start. John had a message on Instagram and asked if someone plays the objectively best game of the season, but has political and social views that are antithesis of yours, would you vote for them at Final Tribal Council?
Oof.
That's such an interesting question. Because
Yeah.
here's the thing. I honestly don't know if you learn, and I obviously I'm not on Survivor, but I feel like everyone's in it to win $1 million, right? So whenever you're talking with people, whenever you're socializing, whenever you're doing all that stuff, you do have like jury votes in your mind. You do have that at the end. And so I honestly don't know if that's something that would even like that even comes up because you're trying not to, I don't know, alienate anybody that could be a potential vote. Because if I found out something like that, I probably would not vote to have like get them to get $1 million. But I feel like it just isn't something that is the main focus of conversation. You're trying to keep it light. If you're not talking about Survivor, you're probably trying to keep it light, or you're probably talking about food. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Be wrong, but I just feel like you wouldn't really want to potentially risk one vote of yours. So I just feel like it's probably not the main topic of conversation.
That's true. Although it may not be a main topic of conversation, I do think that people will say things,
Mhm.
maybe indirectly, that can imply their beliefs. And I also think that learning about people, where they come from, what information they do share, I do think that over the course of a long game like Survivor, that you are able to learn a significant amount about people. That being said, yeah, most people are probably not trying to, you know, make anyone feel like an outlier or different or othered by their beliefs, and they'll probably try and seem especially inclusive if they aren't already. But that being said, I think that I would have a really hard time voting for someone if I felt like this person doesn't want me to have rights as, for
Mhm.
example, a gay man, or this person is bigoted in some way. And I think it would be really, really hard for me to cast my vote for that person for many reasons. But if they played objectively the best game, do you want to be the fool on the jury who says, I'm not, voting for this person even though they obviously outmaneuvered everybody else? But at the same time, as Phil and I were discussing last week, juries can vote however they want. And that's
Mhm.
the beauty of the jury system. And it changes every season, and each person on the jury is allowed to vote however they want. They earn that right by getting that far in the game. So although it could potentially be unpopular to vote for someone if they didn't play the best game, I think, like, I would probably end up going with my heart, which I know is not a very popular opinion in this very, strategic and, like, strategy appreciative new era, but that's just me, I don't know.
Well, and here's the thing, like, yeah, I feel like people always think that when they go on the jury, they're going to be completely unbiased and completely like objective to the game. But the thing that you have to remember is when you go on Survivor, you are a human first and foremost. So when we saw, for example, this week when Dee was talking about how difficult it was to vote out Kelly, um, that's because Dee and Kelly are very close. When I went to the fan screening, Kelly came, which was really, really cool, and she was like, so one thing that they didn't show this much in the season is how close Dee and I were on the beach. And so Dee was like, yeah, that was, I mean, she had to do what she had to do, but she definitely had, the baggage that came with it. It wasn't just like a game bot move. Nobody really, not very few people go out on Survivor and are just 100% game bots. And they also realize that there are real implications of $1 million in the real world, which is why maybe some people didn't, for example, vote for Mike White, because Mike White, is a producer, was on The Amazing Race, is a writer, wrote School of Rock, was in School of Rock.
Yeah,
And so having money out in the real world is a real reason why. I mean, $1 million is not like like a fake amount of money. Like that's a life-changing amount of money.
yeah.
And so, it's not, the Survivor is not void of the real world, which is something that is I think people forget.
Yeah, absolutely, I think that's a wonderful point, and I really like the example about Mike White because that's hard when you're a known entity and people know that you have accomplished a lot in life and you're probably pretty wealthy, but if people could go back, I bet the jury of David versus Goliath may have voted a little differently, but,
You're probably right.
that's that on that.
Absolutely. Um do you want to read a question, David?
Sure. So Penny emailed us asking, just getting into Survivor and I started with a new era. I feel like it's just about big moves for the sake of big moves. Which earlier seasons should I watch? Ooh,
Great
this is a
question.
great question. Tegwith,
Great
what are you
question.
thinking?
Well, so first and foremost, I feel her saying the new era, like, I feel like it's big moves for the sake of big moves. I think is correct for a lot of it, but I do feel like there are waves in Survivor, because when you go out on Survivor, you're gonna take there's kind of like a recency bias. You're gonna take what you just saw before you left. So, for example, in this case, in season 45, they had watched throughout the middle of 44, I believe. Um, or maybe not even that far. And so they take that into account when they go out on the beach. And so I think that, for example, when people saw like Erica go through, right? Like Erica was very on the low, and then she ended up winning. So I feel like, it goes in waves. But what earlier season? That's like a huge question. So the season I always recommend people start with is China. I've said it a couple of times on here. I think it's a really good first new cast, a good new, like, all newbies. I mean, I think that it's not so twist heavy, that if you go back and watch the earlier stuff, it's not going to be like boring. I'm using air quotes because I don't think it's boring, but some people like say that without the twists, without the advantages, whatever, it might be a little bit slower. But so then it's not like so advantage heavy that it's like, it shocks you when there's none, but you kind of learn the basics of Survivor. You learn what immunity idol is and so forth. There are big moves. It's a good cast. And also it's in standard definitions, so that when you go back and watch other standard definition things, you're not like just used to the high def, which I think is a silly reason, but I do kind of think that it's a thing. So I always definitely say China. But if we're just saying like not your first season, but just go back and watch a season, I would then probably say maybe San Juan del Sur. I love San Juan del Sur. So what do you think?
I think those are great choices. And I think that both of those seasons, although there are some really impressive strategic maneuvers, a lot of it is relationship driven. And it's really fun, I think, to see strategy, but when there has been a lead up to it based on the social aspect of the game, and then repercussions from a social perspective. And look, Penny, if you're not looking for huge, crazy strategic maneuvers, and you just want to see crazy personalities doing crazy things, then I cannot emphasize more watching Survivor Gabon.
Mhm.
Also watching Survivor Panama Exile Island. Those are two seasons where, yes, there is some strategy, maybe not a lot, but there is definitely a whole bunch of characters who are very eclectic and compelling, and sometimes fall into the quote unquote trashy reality TV trope, which I personally love. I think that's food for the soul. So Penny, go do a little sampling, Penny, and report back.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, you can't really go wrong. If you're watching Survivor already in the new era, I think you just close your eyes and pick a season, and I think you'll really enjoy it. Maybe stay away from the returnees, the fully returnees are the ones that you haven't seen, just because it's more fun to get the backstory behind like what's going on, who these people are, their relationships to other people. But yeah, I think you just kind of go, that one kind of a thing. Why not, right?
Yeah.
All right. So this one is interesting. It's not really a question, but we did get something. So a former Survivor contestant who would like to remain nameless says, not really a question, but Tyson saying Winners at War was decided before they hit the beach is just an excuse for why he didn't perform well. I'm not aware of Tyson saying this. David, do you know what this is?
It's funny because after I received this message from this anonymous Survivor contestant, I did stumble upon this on Reddit. And I believe Tyson said something on his podcast to the extent that, yeah, Winners at War was, predetermined because of the pregame and everyone's relationships. And look, I wasn't there. I don't know what to believe. I'm sure that a lot of the game was influenced by pregame relationships. That's how a lot of returnee seasons work. You're friends with these people. You hobnob with them at these social events. You know them. You know their families. Things get messy, and I'm sure that affects the game. But this person seems to believe that this is just an excuse for Tyson. But I don't know if I believe that. But this person, this unnamed Survivor contestant, is coming in hot.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, like, what was the first Blood versus Water, when it was Candace and her boyfriend, husband, fiance, whoever. I mean,
Hmm.
the theory is that she was kind of voted out early on because she was not originally in the cast. And so everyone had pre-gamed with other people, and so because they weren't a part of her, or was that the season? Yeah, I think so.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that pre-standing relationships are very important on Survivor, which is why on a regular season of Survivor, you're not cast with people that you know, because it makes it not as objective or anything like that. But when it comes to, I mean, we all know how these live Survivor events are. There are people that there are group chats, there's everything. So I feel like I feel like predetermined is a big stretch, but I feel
Yeah,
like there maybe were alliances ahead of time and things
I'm
like that,
sure.
and not everyone got together and shook their hands and be like, "Okay, it is Tony, and we have decided." You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
but, if that's the way Tyson feels, that's the way Tyson feels. I can't prove I don't think anyone can prove that right or wrong.
No, I just think it's interesting that Tyson is using that as a reason for
Mhm.
his performance on Winners at War when the season that he won, spoiler alert here, folks, was a returnee season. Well, half returnee season. It
Yep.
was blood versus water. So obviously it sort of worked out for him. I'm
Yep.
not saying he didn't maneuver super well. I think he played a very impressive game that season. I particularly love his use of milking his injury with
Mhm.
his shoulder or arm. Regardless, Tyson won a season where that was the case.
Mhm.
So it's interesting to see that he likes it in certain perspectives, but doesn't like it in others. So all right. Well, if you, former Survivor contestant, want to name yourself and come out and start a beef with Tyson on social media, we will be glad to host this proverbial boxing match here
Yep.
on Survivor Social.
Absolutely. Retweet, retweet. We have one final question. Do you want to read it?
Yes. Ooh, this one is from a good friend of mine, Jonathan. Jonathan, if you are listening, I'm very happy you sent this question in. He said, okay, what do you consider crossing the line in strategy? Because lying and backstabbing is okay, but what do you consider too much? Other than straight up physically threatening someone, of course, is there anything that is just straight up dirty? Hmm.
I think that's a great question because I think I get annoyed when people go on Survivor or Big Brother, Boy Jane, and don't want to actually play the game. They don't. They think that them not lying or them, whatever, it makes them better than other people when you're there for a considerably large amount of money that, again, like I said earlier, is life changing. So if you're not there to play the game, then don't go. Like, if don't pretend that that strategy is better than any other strategy. It is a strategy that you are using, which, yeah, you might not be lying, but you're still manipulating the truth in order for people to like you. So that's still a strategy and it doesn't make you better. That's what I have to say on that. But I do think that you can go too far. And I think by going too far, I think when you bring your own or their family members into it, and like I've never liked it when people like, unless they actually mean it, when they like swear on somebody else, especially on their kids. I don't love that personally, because I don't know, there's something about it that like just seems like a little icky, and so like using, I'm not saying that like using what you're going through isn't, do that, like, use your personal experiences, whatever, but there's like I think there's kind of a line in like bringing, manipulating people based on like their relationships or their other, outsides. Um, so that, but I mean, backstabbing, bring it on. Like lying, of course, but I just think that, if you bring like other family members or whatever into this, I think to me it's a little icky. What about you?
It's very tricky. It's incredibly tricky, and I think you can use these lies and deceptions more when you know the people that you're working with in the cast.
Hmm.
So I think the reason why Johnny Fairplay's dead grandma lie was so effective when it was because it was later in the game. And I think it curried more favor because people got to know him a little bit more. And same thing with Twyla. It hurt more when she swore on her son's name and then took it back because it was later in the game and people really loved and appreciated her as a person. So I think that if you're gonna go for those really gnarly, egregious lies, I think you have to be aware of who the jury is
Hmm.
or is going to be composed of and use that as sort of a litmus to ask yourself, can I pull this off? And if it does get revealed and I do get discovered, is it gonna blow up in my face?
Hmm.
Or will they just be like, okay, I guess that's a good game move. I guess it's really tricky. It's a big, big, big gamble. So my suggestion to the people who want to go into Survivor and say that, all of your belongings got swept away in Hurricane Katrina like Russell Hands, take a few acting classes and
Yep.
really commit to it. I don't know. I'm not endorsing this because I don't particularly love it either. But if you're gonna do it, I
Do it
say
well.
commit to it and do it
Yeah.
really fucking well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing here is like that's not to say that I, as a viewer, did not absolutely love when Johnny Fairplay lied about his grandmother. That's one of the funniest bits I think I'd ever. No, granted, when I first watched it, I was appalled. I was appalled. But granted, Pearl Islands was I think the second season that I watched. So like I'd started with China and then I watched Pearl Islands, I think. And so I was a newbie. Like I still didn't like Courtney. Crazy. Like, I was just like didn't understand what entertaining television was, I think, at that time. But then I watched it again. I was like, this is objectively amazing and great television. So as a viewer, 10 out of 10, amazing. Yes, please, more. But as a player, there are some things that are tough. That are tough.
Mhm.
Um, but again, if you have any questions like these about the episode, about Survivor in general, make sure to send us any and all of your questions because we love to discuss them. We love all old school, new era, everything. Bring it all on. But let's get into the episode. You ready?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So a couple of things. I know I just want to say I love that we have the previously on Survivor back. I know that it's been like many, many episodes, but like Jeff saying previously on Survivor, oh, my heart melts. It melts. I love it so much. I know it's old news, but it's just like every single time I'm just like smiling ear to ear. Um, okay, but just to give you some context of what was happening. So auction is back, like we already talked about. Only a couple new twists, but no advantages. Bruce lost his vote in the auction, but then he won immunity, so he was relevant at that tribal council. Jake thought he was going home, but Austin and Drew decided to blindside Kelly. And the Reba 4 decided to blindside Kelly at tribal council. It worked perfectly. Jake used a shot in the dark, so now that and it was not safe. And then Kelly ended up going home. Vote was very, very upsetting personally. I hated it. But I liked that we got right back when we started this episode, it was right back from tribal. Immediate reactions. We got Kendra, cheersing to Kelly like she had died, which I loved. It was such a very melodramatic moment, but it was amazing. But she was super blindsided. I mean, like crying.
Yeah.
Do you think that if your like closest ally were out there and you were blindsided with them, you would probably feel that hard, right? I would.
I would be so grateful that it would be nighttime when you got back from tribal because I would probably cry a little bit
Yeah.
for many reasons. One, if I'm close with someone, that's the person I'm confiding in, and it's hard to feel like you're ostracized and you don't have that really close person that you can, be fully transparent with because it's hard having your guard up in this game. Secondly, I would be like, my game is a lot more difficult now without that really close ally. So I would be mourning the fact that my game just got that much harder. So yeah, I'd probably cry, probably be an ugly cry, and I would hope that they didn't film it, but they would.
They definitely would. And the thing to add insult to injury on, specifically when Kendra was out there like upset, we could hear in the background Jake being immensely happy because Jake thought he was going home. Jake thought he was donezo. You don't play your shot in the dark unless you're Matthew or unless you're going home. Like you think you're going home. And so he really thought that it was him. And so he was blindsided as well in a good way. So he's there celebrating. And so we hear him celebrating while Kendra is like crying on the beach by herself. And he's just like, doing a little jig because he's just happy to be there. You know,
Yeah, that's rough. And I
it
feel
was it
like
was it was rough to watch.
when it's a challenge and someone wins and you lose, that's expected. Those people cry in happiness and they'll cheer. And as the loser, you just kind of have to, lick your wounds and get on with it. But I think when it's a vote out, that's a whole other level of pain. And again, I'm glad it would be dark because if I was in Kendra's position and I heard someone cheering, I don't like cockiness as a game player. I don't like people flaunting things in front of me as a game player, so I'm sure I would be beyond irked. So I just wanted to give Kendra a great big hug, and I'm also just really sad that the three women from Bello have been broken up. Like that alliance from day one, I was a huge proponent of, and I was hoping that one of them would make it to the end. And there's still hope for Katura, but
There's still
I'm a little
hope.
little sad.
Crossing my fingers. Well, speaking of the bellow, Bruce realized if Kelly, he was also blindsided. And Kelly was his closest person, his number one to him. And so he was like, if I didn't have this, I probably would be going home. Not only that, he found out that Kelly wanted him out. That whole arc of him, kind of the self-discovery, or the maybe the questioning that he had, that was incredibly interesting television. Incredibly, I thought that was very compelling. What did you think about that whole like segment?
Well, I want to dig into a little bit the reaction of Bruce when he like reflects and is a little introspective. And I want to say this to you, Bruce. Bruce, I feel for you. I do. Believe me, it's hard. I'm sure it's so much harder than any of us can possibly imagine, having not been in that situation. That being said, Kelly, your number one ally, you said was your number one ally, by the way, came to you and said that you should probably change things up. So I do feel for you. However, your number one ally came to you urging you to play differently. If that wasn't enough of an awakening, then this was it. This is what it took. I wish that you had been more open to Kelly talking to you very directly, because I think that maybe you could have come to this realization sooner and it would have helped your game. Sorry.
Interesting.
Love
I
you,
I
Bruce.
kind of I agree with that. I will say one of the things that I thought was interesting about the segment was, I think in old school Survivor, we would have never seen this.
Hmm.
In old school Survivor, we would have never seen him contemplating what this means to him as a human, what this means to him and his daughter, what this means. We would have just seen, because in old school Survivor, they would have edited him. They would have edited Bruce to be the villain, most likely, like a Bruce Gatora, maybe like a Sugar Randy kind of. Not saying that either of them are like the other two, but that kind of like thing. And we would have never gotten this human moment from him. And that's why I think the producers and the editors are very highly aware of the hate and the vitriol that these players get online. Even if you're loved, even if you are beloved on a cast, you are still getting hate somewhere in some shape or form. And so I think that they have been shying away from editing quote unquote villains, because the hate that Jerry received without social media. I mean, she was booed off a stage. And that was really hard for her. And imagine what that editing for her would be like now. If it was just like that now, she would be getting, just so much hate on social media, in real life, all of that stuff. And so I think that like it was a very human thing to see. And I think that it was interesting, because I don't think that we would have gotten this little bit about Bruce if it had been like 10 years earlier, 15 years earlier. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that is an incredibly good point. And I also want to take this as an opportunity to say to everybody listening, and wherever you are seeing this or viewing this, do not condone this. Do not allow this. If you see this, shut it down. If it's hateful, report it. And do not be that person to disseminate and spew hate towards people, because this is a game. At the end of the day, this is a TV product, it's a game, and regardless, no one signed up to be hated, thrown shit at, crapped on. They do not deserve this. So, absolutely unacceptable. And I agree. I think back to when Jerry Manthe was booed off the stage at the reunion of Survivor All Stars, and it breaks my heart, because this is a game at the end of the day, and she's a real person. I know we talk about these people in the realm of editing and characters, but these are people with feelings. Keep that in mind, folks.
Yes.
That being
Kids,
said,
the more you
I'm
know.
definitely gonna like criticize Drew at some points and the way he acts, but that doesn't mean that I don't like him as a person, and I'm not saying that he's a bad person. And I think we have to separate and be willing to say, okay, maybe there are parts of this that I do not like,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that I'm going to send hate to someone or say that they are terrible or besmirch their good name, because these people worked really hard to get here, and I believe in all of these people as good people.
Yes, I agree. Retweet, second that, boost. Yes, please. Um, all right, so we're gonna it's still this nighttime. It's still night after the vote, and immediately Kendra and Katura begin talking about how Dee is the biggest threat on Reba, and they need to target her as soon as possible. First and foremost, What do you think about that? Do you think that Dee is the biggest threat on Reba right now?
Absolutely. Well, probably along with Austin, but they don't realize that Austin is, holding this much power, right? But I think that Dee and Julie, really good pair. Drew and Austin, really good pair. Put those two pairs together and you got a really strong four. So I think both of them, Austin and Dee, are both in power positions. So I worry for Dee because everyone's sort of recognizing the fact that she's playing out front, and this episode did not help her case at all because she was very, very adamant about how the vote was going to go. So I'm a little worried for Dee. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm a little worried for her too. But then here's the thing that I was curious because, right, so obviously at this point in the episode, they didn't know the twist that was going to be happening later on. But at this point in the episode, if we do some quick little math, Reba had 4, Bello has 4, and Lulu has 1. To me, that seems like, not there's no power 4 when it's a 4-4-1. And Katurah then saw herself as a swing position where she could either side with old Reba or, with Bello, and she decides to go over and tell Reba about this, right?
Yeah, I
I
think the
don't
difference is that even though the numbers are the numbers on paper, I think the Reba numbers are actually a lot more solidified. And I think the Bello numbers are fractured. I think that Jake is genuinely just there. He comes back from tribal saying like, "Wow, I'm still here. This is amazing." And if someone's that shaky and they know that they're on the bottom, they're not a solid number. It's not like everyone who's left on Bello is really strong and tight. So I would argue that even though the numbers are the same on paper, based on old tribal lines, the old Reba is a lot more solidified.
Yeah, no, I mean, they definitely are, and I think it's actually quite impressive how solidified they are. It's just, like, so frustrating to me to see 4 people who seem to not feel like they have any agency, but if they just look to their left and look to their right, there's their agency. They're, like, begging to be a part of this Reba, and like giving them information, and it's no fault. That means that Reba's doing their job because they're either helping to reinforce the splits between Bello, they are, helping to solidify bonds between individuals on Bello. Like Reba is playing it beautifully so far,
Yeah,
beautifully.
I
And
completely agree.
it's so frustrating for somebody who, when I'm watching, and obviously, Katora and Bruce don't really get along that well. Um, Jake is just kind of like there. And then Kendra was just blindsided, and her number 1 is now out of the game. And so I feel like she's just like trying to find her footing. It's just like so much is happening to make them kind of be further and further apart, and Reba keep coming closer and closer together. And this is kind of skipping ahead, but not really. But the fact that Austin has 2 idols and we're in the final 8 and no one has seemed to target him yet, bonkers to me. That's bonkers. That's some good social game right there.
That's
Say what you
incredibly
will.
good social game. Yeah, I think that Austin is very well positioned. And as I've been saying previously, he's either going to flame out in a blaze of glory or he could possibly win it all. And I'm really interested to see how he progresses. And to touch back on Bello for a second, I think that there comes a point in the game where if your tribe, your original tribe is fractured, you sort of are at a crossroads and you're like, do I just play my game as like an individual person, or do I try and cling on to the group that I once had? And I think a lot of them have made that jump, that irreversible jump, to be playing for themselves rather than playing as a unit. And we hear that with Bruce at the reward later, where he says there are no tribal lines anymore, which there obviously are. Old Reba is just perhaps hiding a lot better than Bruce can perceive, but it seems like the old Bello has just decided that they've broken up and the band could get back together. They could if they so desired. It would probably be in their best interest, but I don't think that any of them are going to choose that anymore. I think it's gotten to the point where they said, this is the decision that I've made. I'm going to try and be a free agent, quote unquote, whatever that means. I always think of Randy Bruce when I hear the quote free agent. So Randy I want you to know anytime I ever hear that term on Survivor or I read about it on Reddit, I automatically think of you, my friend. And yeah, I think that Bello is just too separated and shattered to come back together, even though it would probably be in their best interest.
Yeah, and I think that it would be shocking, but I think it'd be really impressive if one of the Bello could like band the people together. I don't think it's going to happen, but I just wish it would have. Oh my
You
god.
want to know why I don't think it's going to happen? Because the person who would have done that would have been Kelly, and
Yeah,
she's gone.
and she's gone. Yep. I think you're absolutely 100% right.
Which is an amazing strategic move to get rid of her then, which I know we're talking about last episode at this point, but they located who the glue was and they got all the little macaroni pieces to just separate. And without their glue, they're
Yeah.
just a bunch of macaroni pieces pushed up against each other, but they're not really held together. All right,
Yeah.
we've talked about this for far too long.
No such thing. No such thing. But we go to the next morning and we talked a little about Bruce kind of spiraling. Was very upset about, that he was maybe dragging her game, maybe not definitely dragging her game down, how this means the implications in his day-to-day life. But then Drew also realized that Bruce was upset and sad. And said, he's playing this imaginary version of the game in his head, but now he has to, confront the reality of the situation. Which, number one, I think it's a very interesting moment. It was a very interesting moment. Just, it was a confessional, I think. But also it's just like, he boiled Survivor down into just this one thing, right? Perception is reality. And what you have going on in your head as a player is not necessarily what others perceive you as, or, whatever. And that is the actual reality. So you might think, so for example, Carolyn, she was keeping her everything that she was doing kind of under the radar to a certain point, pretending that she's just kind of like crazy, all this stuff, whatever. And, playing that up. And then, but if the other players don't see that you have the agency, but the fans do, they're not going to vote for somebody who they don't think actually has the agency, because their perception is the actual reality of everything. And so,
Mm.
I thought that, Drew kind of saying this just showed what Survivor is you might not always, your intentions are not necessarily what's actually happening, which I thought was very interesting.
I think so too, and I want to give props to Drew because I have been critical of him, and I think that this was a great analysis. And the thing I want to add is a big question for you, Tegwith. Do you think that people are able to see the situation more clearly when they're in control and at the top? And do you think that oftentimes the perspectives that can be a little bit more diluted are from people who are at the bottom? Like, I automatically think of Jason Siska and Survivor Micronesia, where he's like, "What are you talking about? Like, we'll be fine, Eliza. We'll just use this stick and everything will be fine." And he's just, still not really understanding the gravity of the situation. But do you think it takes to be in the in crowd or in the power seat or power position to be able to really see the situation for what it is? Do you think that Bruce is not seeing it fully because he's not really in control?
I think honestly, first off, I think it's a very interesting question, because here's the thing: control can shift so quickly in Survivor. And so I think that you see what you think is happening. And so for a point in time, I think if you are in control, then you can actually see everything that's happening probably pretty clearly. But if you lose that control, which can happen in a blink of an eye, sometimes it happens even faster than that. Um, then you're kind of like spiraling. If you have the ability to be separated from a situation, obviously you're going to have a slightly different perspective than when you're inside of it. So when I'm, this is a very silly thing, but when I'm not silly, but like kind of a depressing analysis. But when I'm from Florida, when my parents would get hit by a hurricane, sitting up here in New York, I can see the full picture of what's going on with the hurricane. I can literally see the clouds. I can see how far they are from the eye. I can analyze things. But when my parents are in the hurricane, all they see is like high winds and heavy rain, and they're just like, in it. And so when you're playing a game like Survivor, when you're actually not in it and you're not like grasping at straws and trying to claw your way up, then you have that ability to separate yourself and you can see the whole picture. Not always correctly, because like I said, you can lose that very easily. But if you feel like you have the space, then I feel like you can analyze slightly more. But I don't think that really anyone is truly. There have been very few players that are truly, quote, in the power position for a very extended period of time. I would be thinking probably like Boston Rob, Kim, maybe Tony, but probably not even, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
no one's really up there that long. And so you always feel it at some period of time. I'd be very shocked if these four are sitting comfortably up there for, longer than this next episode. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think that's a wonderful perspective and very realistic because you're right, it does change and people don't sit in that position for very long. And I think what separates good Survivor players from fantastic Survivor players is the ability to have that change of perspective even when you're not in that position. And I
Mhm.
think of people who like Suri who are able to have that 360 vision no matter what's going on and what position they're in and sort of like take themselves out of it and really clock what's going on. Which I think is an incredibly hard skill. But I really commend Drew, whether he's in a great position or not, to be able to say this so well. And really clock the perception of Bruce. So bravo, Drew.
Yeah, I'm liking Drew more and more as a storyteller kind of throughout the season. I'm not saying he's like my absolute favorite, but I'm kind of liking his perspective more and more as the season goes on.
Hmm.
Very quickly, we see Emily talk to Drew and Austin, her closest allies in the game right now, about potentially targeting D. So this is the second time we've heard D in this episode. Austin talks her out of it, and he understands that, but he totally understands Emily. And he's telling her, kind of like, this is why we don't want to do it right now, blah, blah, blah. Personally, if I were Emily, that would be a red flag immediately. Immediately, red flag. Because the fact that they're kind of entertaining it, but they just like shifted so quickly makes me feel like if I were Emily, I'd be like, oh man, okay. So I feel like they're closer to her than they are to me, which is the truth. And I think maybe Emily sees that at the end of this episode. I think that maybe she sees that she's staunchly in number 5 and not maybe in 3 where she thought she was. But what did you think about this whole moment about this, the 5, the Reba and Emily?
I don't know what the alternative is for Emily. Go with the shattered, broken band of misfits of Bello? Like, she's not necessarily in the best position, but I don't think that it's gonna come down to, repercussions for Emily in the next couple votes. I think she's probably gonna be fine for the next couple votes while these 2 sides continue to war. But I think for the long term, yeah, Emily should be asking herself, like, "Is this really the best for me?" And I think the only thing that I really took umbrage with was the fact that this whole exchange happened so amicably, and I think that Austin was like, "That's a really good point." And Emily's like, "Yeah, I'm a little concerned about this." And that's what I'm really disappointed about with New Era of Survivor. This is just too friendly, too amicable. I wanna see people get mad at each other, and again, maybe it's just because I just finished rewatching Survivor Exile Island, but I wanna hear someone like Shane just call someone's apartment shitty and threaten to attack them. Okay, maybe not do that, but I just like the craziness and the antics of these personalities clashing, and although I think there are, like, little things where we get, like, Katurah being annoyed with Bruce, and we get Jake being a little much at tribal council, we're not seeing any real, like, I am going to openly fight with this person or, like, go out of my way and be like, "No, I disagree with you." And that's what hurts my heart about New Era of Survivor. Like, I feel like everyone's just sort of like, "I'm just gonna put on a happy face and make these moves behind the scenes." And it's like, why not just, like, stab someone from the front?
Yeah.
Try that for once.
Try
Sorry.
No, I totally get what you mean. I think the closest we've got to a fight was with Owen and James in 43, and that was like barely a fight. That was like not really even a fight,
Mm-mm.
Like I think that that's a great observation and absolutely yeah, it was very amicable. It was like I disagree with you for now, but we'll continue playing. And it's the game. I feel like the game has evolved so much that it's like very much, I don't know, you're playing like professional baseball and not really, going as you used to. Um, but then we saw Tree Mail again. I love seeing Tree Mail. That made me so happy. I love what was your thought about Tree Mail?
I love tree mail in every capacity. I love the walking to tree mail. I like the drama and conflama and glitter and all of the fun and glee of going to get tree mail and opening it and like seeing what's in it. Um, my favorite tree mail instance in the history of Survivor is in Survivor Vanuatu after they've had a challenge with a pig, wherein Eliza Orleans is unable to grab a pig, and everyone's like mad that they lost. And she's like, I should have been the one to open and close the gate. I shouldn't have been the one to have to try and grab a pig. And then at tree mail is a pig, and Eliza has to be the one to like wrangle this pig all the way back from camp. Survivor gold.
That's so funny.
Gold. If you have not watched Survivor Vanuatu,
Watch.
after this podcast, go watch it immediately. Immediately.
Yeah.
But this tree mail in particular, I really didn't like the message itself, because I think it said something along the lines of like, blah, 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 this should cause anxiety beyond words. And it's like, don't tell us how we should feel. I could just hear Jeff being like, we're gonna like stoke the flames by stressing them out when they read it. It's like, okay, the stakes are already high. They know one of them is gonna be eliminated. Like, calm down. I don't know. I liked it when the tree mails used to rhyme.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just a purist, but
No, I like it. I like it. I like riddles. I think it's fun when they have to kind of figure it out. I didn't love that. I also very much didn't love dividing them into 3 groups of 3. I've never liked when they kind of eliminate systematically and then go to the end and do like an endurance thing at the end. I don't find that interesting. I don't find that very compelling. Just do the endurance thing. It just, I don't know, for some reason really, really bugs me. And the fact that they're on a team, we'll get into the challenge after a little, in a little bit, but I just feel like, you know, I liked they had to break themselves into teams. It wasn't a rock draw. So there at least is a positive. I'm going to find a positive sometimes when I say a negative. But I just feel like it disincentivizes people, not disincentivizes, but what's the word I'm looking for? Like disenfranchises people. Like it's an individual, it's supposed to be an individual game. It's supposed to be the part where it turns into an individual game. It's individual immunity. It's not team immunity. It's not, this group of 3 or else you lose your vote. And so I didn't like that they broke up into 3, but I liked that they didn't know what they were doing. So, everyone was anticipating that each group of 3 might need to vote somebody out, which is an insane thing to think at 9. It's insane.
But you don't know.
Be like, I know you don't know. That's true. But like, Survivor has to have a certain number of episodes. Like that, I do know.
True.
Survivor has to have a certain number of episodes because I'm pretty sure that they have to air a certain number of ads.
You're right.
They have, a certain slot. And one thing I will always say is I think people forget that Survivor is a TV show first and foremost and a game second. They are there for ratings. They are there for ads. They are there for that. It's a TV show. And so the fact that I literally was like, the fact that they would not be voting out 3 people at 9, meaning that they would be losing like 2 episodes right then.
A third of their cast?
Yeah.
At that point? Yeah, that would have been ridiculous.
If that ever happened on Survivor, someone should go check on Jeff Probst. Go check and make sure he's okay, because I don't think that he, would be making in his right mind to make that decision at 9. I feel like he would definitely do something like that at like 13.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And if you're listening and you would go check on Jeff Probst, do it anyway. I'm a little concerned to begin with, if I'm being completely transparent. And yeah, split up people into groups for a reward challenge.
Yeah.
But for immunity, what is the point of having an actual merge, giving them a different buff, if you're just going to say, you guys are going to have to compete in groups? What is the point? I do not understand. Is it just because they're like, we heard that Tegwyth did not like the challenges, so we will be modifying it, but we're going to do it our way? It's like, we're not going to let Tegwyth really win.
No. That was just like, I don't know. It just seems so weird. But, we'll talk a little bit more about the challenge in a second, but we are going to go into our first ad break of the episode, and we'll talk a little bit more about the challenge right after this.
Hi, Survivor Now podcast listeners. I am Katie from KT Designs, better known as Katie Tedesco Art on both Instagram and Etsy. I have been designing and selling Survivor products for over 7 years at my Etsy shop, including replicas like hidden immunity idols and Survivor trading cards with all of the players' stats on the back. I am so grateful for Survivor Now for giving me this shout out and helping me reach even more superfans. I love listening to their podcast. So if you are looking for some really unique reality TV products for yourself or to give a superfan in your life, come check out my Etsy shop at www.etsy.com/shop/KatieTedescoArt.com.
All right, and we're back. So let's get into the challenge. We usually don't talk about the challenge, but this one, as we kind of hinted at before the break, it was kind of a weird one. So groups of 3 ran an obstacle course in 3 stages, balancing a ball, walking on a balance beam, build a rope bridge, and then land balls on high rings. As the individuals hold discs with a stretched out arm. Like this. And also, Jeff Probst was wrong. A man had won it in a previous.
Yeah, Jeff, if you're gonna get a fact wrong about Survivor, maybe don't do it with one of the seasons that's on Netflix right now that a lot of
Yeah.
people have seen. Like maybe do it from like, I don't know, Survivor Fiji or Thailand or Guatemala or some that someone hates, but not co-wrong. Not co-wrong, Jeff.
And also, just to add to that, why would the editors were they trying to like pull one on Jeff? They were like, haha, we're gonna put this in because he was wrong. Because he said that when he wasn't, like, the camera wasn't on him. That could have been edited out in post very easily. Were they doing it to show that, like, oh my God, Jeff's also human? I don't know. It was very weird. That moment was
Check on Jeff.
What?
Hashtag check on Jeff.
Check on Jeff. Hashtag check on Jeff.
Immediately.
Literally. No, Ryan clocked it right away. I didn't even notice that he said that. And Ryan clocked it and was like, no, that's wrong. That's incorrect.
And look, you know what? He is a man who has been doing this since 2000. I am not going to, come down on him for not remembering something, but don't air it. Someone have a fact checker here. Why would you need to keep that in? Was it just to piss us off, or was it just so they could cast another Emily Flippin who said, I'm just applying for this show simply because of the fact that Jeff didn't remember this fact? And I am completely irritated by that, and I'm going to win just to spite all of the people who got that fact wrong.
I would love that. That person is me. No, I'm just kidding. But okay, so first stage, you cross over the balance beam and then you dig up the little ladder rungs. The first people eliminated were Austin, Emily, and Katurah. They lost their vote, or they in theory lost their vote. They, could maybe win it back when they went on their journey. Next stage was they had to build a ladder bridge and then like land a ball on the thing. And who went out there? That was Kendra. Nope, I lied. That was a lie. That was Dee and the other 2 people that were with Dee. And then finally, it was Kendra, Bruce, and Julie at the end with the fingertips. And Bruce ended up winning a second time in a row. Very impressive by all 3 people, let me just say. I think that would be one that I would really not enjoy doing. I would not like to do. But I just am like shocked that Kendra was like contorted. Like she looked like she was like very uncomfortable. But Bruce ecstatically put that necklace right back on his neck and he was safe again. And everyone wanted to burn his idol. Like that was a big thing. They wanted to get rid of his idol and then maybe get out, Kendra, or Jake or something. And they can't do that. They can't do that because he has the immunity.
Yeah.
All right. So how did you feel? Let's talk about this really quickly. How did you feel about 3 people potentially losing their vote?
I'm exhausted. I'm going to be so honest. It's like, why? First and foremost, I want to back up and talk about the challenge for a second. There was a show, I can't remember what network it was on. It was called Minute to Win It. And it was not, I want to say it was hosted by like Guy Fieri, but definitely wasn't.
I think it was like Howie Mandel.
Okay, that sounds more correct. But that show came up with really creative challenges, and they only had a minute to complete them, the participants, and they would be using household everyday items. And I'm going to be so transparent. I think that those challenges were much more enjoyable to watch than a lot of the challenges on Survivor 45 and in the new era. My family had parties that were dedicated to Minute to Win It, so maybe I'm a little bit biased. Um, however, I just I'm not having a fun time watching these challenges. And again, maybe it's because I just finished watching Survivor Exile Island, but there was a challenge where they literally had to run to the jungle, and part of it was like, count how many iguanas are in this cage. And although it was absolutely ridiculous, I was like, wow, I haven't seen that before. But I'm just bored watching these challenges. That being said, I've never been the person to really love the challenges on Survivor, but we are not in the heyday of Survivor challenges anymore. Where was the challenge? Where are the challenges from Survivor Palau? Where are the challenges from Survivor Micronesia? And even Cook Islands, which I don't particularly love, but they had great challenges. I'm just bored. Bring back Howie Mandel. Do the Minute to Win It challenges.
Bring back Howie Mandel. That's so funny. No, yeah, you're preaching to the choir. I do not like the challenges. I find them uninteresting. Land a thing on a thing, cross a thing with balancing a thing. Good job. Okay, great. Continue. Next. Like that's unnecessary in my opinion. And I just feel like
I didn't even answer your question.
oh, did I have a question? What was
Your
the question?
Your question was how I felt about the people losing their votes.
Oh, that's so
But
funny.
I just went on my 4-minute Minute to Win It rant, and I'm really sorry.
Never apologize for talking about Minute to Win It. Never. This is actually now a Minute to Win It pod. We don't talk about Survivor anymore.
That's
Talk about
true.
Minute to Win It. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
My answer, I was annoyed. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I was happy that they had the ability to get their votes back. I was worried that they were just going to take them out. Like, no. But it just, why is my only fault, my question. Why? It just doesn't seem like let the players play. And I know why they did it. They did it because they wanted to keep the vote at 9 interesting. But unbeknownst to them, they probably made it way more uninteresting by doing that because, it was an easy vote. And it maybe would have been an easy vote the other way around. But, I think that they were trying to make it so that it wasn't an easy vote. But sometimes when you mess with something, it makes it that so that people aren't going to do an interesting thing because you messed with it. So don't mess with it that much. But we go back to the beach with who was it? Jake, Drew, and Dee. And Jake was just like, happy to be there. He's a free agent. He's, happy go lucky. Because only Bella voted for him at the last tribal council, which also I thought was a little sad. For him. Like that was like a sad thing for him. Like only his previous tribe mates voted for him. He wanted to, build trust, open things up, but then, Drew and Dee were like, yeah, okay, well, we're going to do our own thing. We're going to eat all the rice. Jake's not going to get any rice. No rice for you, Jake. They were like, oh yeah, you can have the burnt ones. Jake comes back. Okay, fine. Happy to eat the thing. All the rice is gone. Jake, where do you think the rice went? What would you think if they were making rice, you come back and all the rice is gone except for the burnt ends?
I'm a cynical, pessimistic person in my day-to-day, let alone a game for $1 million where everyone is set out to backstab each other. I would be on a warpath.
Yeah.
I am a hungry bitch. And if
Sandwich
someone
too.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't even have to be for a sandwich. Like Austin had good reason to be, on the warpath because of that sandwich, but I would have been on the warpath for, a spoon of sugar, a la Survivor Game Changers.
Yes. Yeah, that was brutal. But, Austin, I don't think we talked about this, but prior to the challenge, Austin gave Julie one of his idols because they were worried about, the possibility of one person in each, little trio going home. But it was Drew and Dee were talking about playing both idols on Dee and Austin at this thing because everyone would be throwing votes on them. And then they can use that to take out Kendra instead. I loved how they were talking about this like it was their idols.
Yeah.
Like those aren't yours.
True.
Those are Austin's. Austin can do whatever he wants with them. I kind of feel like Drew feels like he has power over Austin. I feel like Drew, and I could be wrong, but I feel like Drew really feels that Austin is doing the things that Drew says. in a way that like I think Austin maybe feels like it's a little bit like a partnership, and maybe Drew feels like it's a little bit more like I'm telling him to do things and he's doing it, kind of a thing. What do you think about that dynamic and that duo?
That's a really astute observation that I hadn't considered because now that you say it, Drew does come across as like, I am the puppet master. He told us day one he thinks he's one of the smartest person if people I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm clearly not the smartest person to ever talk about Survivor. But Drew once claimed that he was the smartest person to play Survivor or something along those lines. And I wouldn't be surprised if he thought that he was just stringing Austin along and having Austin do his bidding for him. But it's scary because and I hate to use this comparison because it's gonna sound mean, but it's like Dr. Frankenstein and his creation when he realizes that his creation is, stronger and powerful and out of control and he can't control them. I think that maybe in the future there will be a point where Drew realizes that Austin is ready to wield his own power and Drew doesn't really have a say in it. And I think that could be when Austin plays his idol for someone and Drew says, nope. But they've been very much on the same page so far, or so it seems. But I think there's going to be a point down the line where they don't. And maybe that's going to be an awakening for Drew to be like, wow, I don't really have control of this person like I thought.
Yeah. And then also to add on to that, like, I totally forgot what I was going to say. That was incredible. That happened in a blink of an eye. That was
Almost as fast as Dr. Frankenstein's creation, which everyone calls Frankenstein, but it's not
no,
Frankenstein. It's just the
Frankenstein's
creation.
monster.
Yeah, and the creation scales a mountain in a split second, as fast as the lightning strikes. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Go read it.
Yeah. Started
Actually, after you watch Survivor Vanuatu,
after
go
these
read.
your homework. Watch Survivor Vanuatu. Read Frankenstein.
Yes.
Okay, I remember what it was. So I remember I was talking, I think it was on a live or somebody was talking about how they love how Austin is using his kind of like dumb surfer, kind of what Fabio did to his advantage because he was the only one to figure out the math problem, which knowing math does not mean that you're math being good at math does not mean that you're incredibly astute and very smart. It means you're good at math, right? So he did a problem very well, might I add. Does not necessarily mean that he is just the most astute player and very smart, but I do think it shows us that what all we've seen really of Austin is sandwich and idols. That's like all we've seen of him in this edit. But I think we saw just for a brief second that he's more than just sandwiches and idols.
I'm gonna draw a comparison. I think that Austin may be the new era equivalent to Malcolm Freeberg. I think that they're both good socially. Obviously, Malcolm was in a different position when he first played Survivor. He was an underdog when he was coming from the tribe that he was on. But I do think they are very well-rounded. They're both likable. As one of my good friends likes to say, Austin is a himbo. I'm not sure how Austin feels about that term being used on his behalf, but that has been a term that's been thrown around in the Survivor sphere. Smart, good at getting advantages, likable, like kind of the whole package on paper. So what do you think of that comparison?
Yeah, I think that's a great, yes, I totally agree. And Malcolm is incredibly smart. Malcolm is very smart guy. He is, but he's very good socially as well. And I think that's what I think Austin is, and like we said earlier in the pod, he is playing a great social game. The fact that none of those three people, I guess, are like, the man with two idols problem. Like the fact that they think that he's going to play these idols on them, play them for them as a group and not for him, I think is maybe he actually is. Maybe that's just like who he is, what he's going to do. But I think that is a great social strategy, great social game, and I would be interested to I can't wait to see what happens with that because I think it's slowly but surely boiling. We only have 4 more episodes left this season, so I feel like there's something a little bit there, but let's get to the reward. So the 3 people who won the challenge, the 3 people who made it to the end, got to go eat, got to go to the sanctuary where okay things happen, like mediocre things happen where honestly not much happens. Like a rotisserie chicken, nothing else. They even get ice water. Like
Ugh.
that's so weird. But Kendra, this part made me very sad. Kendra had chicken for the first time in 15 years. Um, she didn't need to eat chicken. She didn't need to eat it because she was going home in like 10 hours, maybe even less. Yeah,
Oh my God.
I
You're
know.
so right. I hadn't
As a
even
veg
thought of that.
as a vegetarian, I went, that's depressing. That's depressing. She went 15 years without eating chicken. Probably wasn't even good. Probably
And
made
they
her sick.
captured it on camera.
Yeah, probably made her sick, and she could have just gone to Ponderosa and eaten as much other food as she wanted. Made me
Ouch.
upset. Yeah,
Yes.
very, very sad.
Sorry,
Um,
Kendra.
I know, right? But we got a little bit more emotional things from Bruce. He was talking a little bit about how he felt, and then Kendra expressed her nervousness, which this is one of the things that I don't love about these sanctuary things. Is in New Era Survivor is I feel like in prior seasons, Kendra and Bruce would have walked off and talked about things by themselves. But I feel like whenever we go to these sanctuaries, they feel the need to bring everybody in and have everyone feel included. When I think that that was the wrong choice. Maybe actively the wrong choice for D. You know what I mean? How they used to split up, right? Didn't they sometimes? Didn't people used to do that?
Yeah, definitely. There were private conversations that were had at rewards. I mean, there were instances where idols were shown or spread to each other during rewards. Rewards did sometimes require you to be with people the whole time, but there were a lot of instances where rewards could be whatever you want it to be. And it sort of feels like, and I know it is a set, but it feels like that the sanctuary is just a set. And you're
Yeah.
on stage and you have to stay there the whole time until the scene is over. And then once you step off that stage, you go right onto the boat and you go back to camp. And it's like, let them actually explore and do their thing. I don't
Yeah.
know. And also, why not go get a sponsorship from like Applebee's again? Make it more exciting. Get some.
Please.
I think that if they really want to get people excited about the sanctuary, not just give them food that like means something. If you want a brand deal and you want more money so you can fucking leave Fiji, maybe give them an incentive and get more money from a brand deal. And like, I don't know,
Yeah.
make it food that people are excited about. I don't
Yeah, make it
know.
fun. I mean, we're still talking about when what's her name was like, what did she
Karishma.
say? Karishma, when she was like talking about Applebee's, or was it Applebee's, or was it was Applebee's, right?
You
Like
know, I
I've
try
never
and
seen
block
anybody.
out IOI, but I think it might have been.
I think it was, and I've never seen somebody so excited in their entire life, and that is still talked about to this day. Part of me feels like in this new era of Survivor, they're trying to be like more pure. Be like, oh, we don't have any sponsorships. We're just here for Survivor. And it's like,
Fuck that.
yeah,
Fuck that. Because the
bring in Home
Charmin,
Depot.
yeah, bring in the Charmin, the Casa del Charmin that they had on
Yes.
Survivor Exile Island that Bruce and Bob Dog got drunk in and fell asleep in. Like, bring the Casa del Charmin, bring the Home Depot, bring all of that, bring Pantene. I don't know if that was a thing, but I feel like it
Herbal
was. Bring
essences.
like, yes, bring Target, bring all of it.
Yeah,
I
100%.
say go for it. But honestly, it might be the fact that all of those brands are like, "Oh, that show's still on?"
I know, maybe. They're lame. We don't like them. I don't like them anymore. I hate them all now. But I bring this all up to say that Kendra then talks with Julie right there how she feels about old Reba and how and she asks about the four, which is just such a scary thing to do when you think that like they're so close. And that just really like made me incredibly nervous. And Julie was like, I feel like I'm at the bottom. I feel like I can make a move at some point. And I'm pretty sure Kendra specifically brings up Dee's name, correct?
Yes.
And Julie goes back and tells Dee, and that's kind of that's it. That's all she wrote for Kendra. She's nervous about Dee and Austin's connection, and Julie, totally understands that Dee may be a threat, but she's never gonna write Dee's name down. I mean, and so just saying all of this stuff to Dee's number one, is not helping Kendra's game. Bruce thinks tribal lines are gone. That's hysterical. His tribal lines are gone. Reba's are not. Reba's are very much still there.
Mhm.
And they're willing to vote Jake. But, I just, I just wish that they could have like, ugh, I just wish, I wish so much that Bello could have done something else, but we're here. It's okay. We'll move on. We go on the journey. Journey is happening. They have to regain their vote. They follow a path. I'm glad. I was worried when I saw that. I thought it was going to be random. I thought it was going to be like, okay, you lose one, you get it, whatever. I'm glad that they, had some agency. And it was a logic math puzzle that they had to complete in 3 minutes. Were you tricked about the hourglass in the title sequence?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Survivor 41 hourglass is honestly incredibly triggering, and not if your name is Sydney Siegel, but it's triggering for many people, myself included.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they were rude to do that to us. I think that they were rude to do that to us. And I'll never forgive them.
They
Ever.
don't care. They're gonna do what they want anyway.
They're gonna do whatever they want. But like, it's just like they go from actively, I don't know, like showing us the shot in the dark, like die in the thing so that we know it's going to be played and whatever. And then they just go and show us an hourglass randomly when it has nothing to do with anything. Like, show us a rotisserie chicken. I don't know. Like the rotisserie chicken had as much to do with that episode, maybe more than that hourglass did.
You are 100% right, and I just had a brilliant idea. When I think rotisserie chicken, I think Costco. And I think that they should have a sponsorship with Costco.
And they could do so much with that. That's not just food. That's literally anything and everything.
That is anything and everything in big quantities. And what would incentivize a starving person? A large quantity of food, a $1.50 hot dog and a drink, a chicken bake, a mango smoothie, all of the above. I'm getting excited just talking about it.
Yes.
Survivor Costco collab right now.
Yes.
Right now.
ASAP. I love that. That reminds me also something that I wish I'm going way back to the auction. Something that I wish that they would do when you're watching the auction in the Dirty 30. They had somebody like bought themselves out of the auction. What was his name? And he went back and he got like a little like stash of food. Bring back the stash of food that you could like keep for yourself. That's an interesting thing that I think would be a really interesting thing to win at an auction, or like get yourself voted out of get yourself kicked out of the auction. Just bring back a stash of food as a reward, as whatever. I think that that's something. Okay.
I think that's a great idea. They should do
Right?
that, and they should also one-off bring back Exile Island and say, you win this, you get to banish, or yeah, you win this reward or this item, you uncover it, you're banished to Exile Island. Jeff, I didn't even think we had Exile Island anymore. Get on the boat. Get on the boat.
Bye. Did I stutter? Please leave. Absolutely. Okay, so as we know, Austin gets his vote back. He successfully gets the puzzle, whereas Katurah and Emily fail to solve it, so neither of them have a vote. So now at final 9, there are only 7 votes available, so that having a 4-person voting block means that you have the majority. Austin,
that's wild.
Yeah.
But can we just talk about Emily for a second?
I know.
I just want to give her a hug.
I know. But arithmetic is not the same thing as like looking at the greater picture.
Oh my gosh,
Which
no.
is what she does.
I
But she
mean,
was so sad.
those two things are not inherently connected, and I think people conflate the two. And as someone who has taken graduate coursework in statistics, just because I can math the math and do some code and do like mixed models in stats or like calculus doesn't mean that I can do mental math in my head, or doesn't mean that I can like put numbers together spatially in my brain. That's just not how my mind works. So I really felt for her, because I'm like, I know that feeling. I'm competent at doing certain things that some people would consider advanced in math, but at the same time, like, you expect me to, what's the square root of 37? Like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And I felt for Emily.
And also the fact that they gave him the worst chalk possible. Why was the chalk this big to write on something that was like this thin? Like, as somebody who hates chalk, I would refuse to solve the puzzle just because of the chalk that they gave me. Like, give them a regular chalk. Why are they giving why sidewalk chalk?
Why the chonky chalk?
Why the
Hashtag
chonky chalk?
why the chonky chalk?
Yep, that make it go viral, people. Hashtag why the chonky chalk. But seriously, I did think that in the moment. I was like, that's a rude thing to do. Just give them a regular chalk. What the heck? Okay. So they go back, and then Austin tells everyone that he also lost his vote. So, interesting lie, 10 out of 10. I kind of love that. Julie told Dee about the conversation with, Kendra and Bruce admitted to their willingness to vote Jake. Julie really wants Jake out. Julie really wants Jake out because Jake wrote down Julie's name and said it in front of everybody, and she wants Jake out because of that. She has obviously not yet been successful, and I think that shows her stance in the Re Before. What do you think about that?
I think that 100% affects things. I feel like Julie wanted to have some control for once. And I think that Dee has been incredibly domineering in some ways, which I'm a fan of when people are able to play out front. And I think also historically in Survivor, when we think people playing up front, we think men. So I love that we can have some diversity in our players in their strategies and their way to maneuver the game, and I think it's awesome because I think we're getting more diversity in that way. However, I think that it doesn't satisfy Julie as someone who's part of an alliance to say, like, no, this is not what we're going to do. Why not? Okay. Do we really think that Kendra's going to win immunity next week? No offense. Maybe she could. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. But there's going to be another opportunity to get Kendra out, in my opinion. And I think that this was just Dee being really, really adamant for not really the best reason. Like, why? Why does it have to be what you want? Why don't you want to like satisfy your number two?
Yep.
Can you think of
Totally agree.
any like instances of when people in Survivor have satisfied their number two or like gone with a plan that they didn't originally want and it still ended up working out for them in the end?
I can't think of anything specifically, but I definitely feel like that has happened many times before. I don't know. I feel like I feel like something happened with San Juan del Sur and maybe Natalie and what's her name? But I don't know. I mean, I feel like the point of an alliance, a very good alliance, is give and take, especially down the line. You give a little, you get a little, and I feel like the fact that Julie has been trying to get Jake out for what, 3 episodes now, and it hasn't been able to go her way, I think it's a red flag for Julie. Another red flag when in terms of the Re Before, let me just say, is Emily thinking that it's Jake, and then Drew letting it almost seemed like he let it slip that it was actually going to be Kendra, and Emily just did not know. Had no idea that that was the case. That also should be a red flag for Emily, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. There
Right?
have been enough signs for Emily to be like, maybe this isn't the best for me.
Yeah, and I really hope we see something about that next episode. In that moment, I think if Emily had her vote, I think that maybe she realized that, there's something off with her not knowing, and I think if maybe she had her vote, we would have seen a little bit of maneuvering on her part, maybe trying to being like, "Hey, I was with them, but I'm clearly their number 5. Let's band together and figure something out." Maybe I could be wrong, but I think that should have been a huge red flag for her. And, we all know that, Dee is able to get her way as she should. Good for her. That means she has good social capital, that she's able to kind of maneuver what she wants. But Dee was getting paranoid, which made Drew paranoid. They always do this. They leave it up in the air before they go to tribal council. What's it going to be? What's it going to be? And then we go to tribal council. We get to see the most iconic jury so far, just like 10 out of 10s on that jury continuing. And Jeff talks about Kelly's blindside and it being one of the biggest blindsides of all time. And maybe not even the biggest blindside, but one of the biggest reactions. It was huge. Like that reaction, I have nightmares about because it just makes me so sad. And, Kendra's talking about how Kelly was her first friend in the game. And Dee said, it shows that anyone can go home at any time. And when she said that, I almost was like, oh my God, is it going to be Dee? There was just a moment where I was like, oh my God, are they going to do this to us again? It wasn't, obviously. But I do feel like Dee's days are limited. I kind of feel like she's gone next or she wins.
She's still my winner pick.
She's still your winner pick?
I've committed to this train and I'm not getting off. And I could shake things up if I wanted to, and send 3 people to tribal, or 3 people lose their votes or whatever, if this was my Survivor. But I've decided that I'm sticking on the D train, even if things are getting a little wonky.
Yeah.
Because I would love a dominant female winner.
Yes. I thought it was gonna be Kelly, but I would freaking love that. I mean, I would love to see Emily win too. I would be so here for that too.
True.
But I thought we had an interesting moment in this tribal where who was it? It was Drew talking about, it could be 3 votes, it could be 2 votes, it could be 1 vote. And Kendra goes, "Oh my God, people maybe lied." And I was like, wait, that's so me. That's so me. Like, she had a real realization right there at tribal council that, oh my God, maybe somebody has their vote. And I think kind of in that moment, Kendra knew that she was going home.
Yeah, I really enjoy Kendra as a person, and I'm starting to think that as a player, she doesn't make it past the merge. I don't think she makes it towards the late game for the most part, because I think she's a person that has good reads sometimes, but plays very emotionally and isn't incredibly perceptive from a strategic standpoint. And maybe in like an older season, she could have filled like a Courtney Merritt type of niche. Maybe not as outlandish and kooky, but I don't necessarily see, if we simulated this season 100 times, or any Survivor season 100 times that Kendra was in, I don't necessarily see her making it to the late game or winning. And I think that this instance kind of explains my reasoning, because it's kind of like, what did you didn't think about this at all? I don't know. Why didn't you doubt these people even a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting moment for sure. And it was just I don't know. I don't know how I would have reacted in the moment, but I mean, I feel like you should think that anyone's lying at any point in time. Like, it's Survivor, I feel like everyone has the ability to lie at any point in time. And so that was very shocking. But and then we get to the vote, right? Speaking of lying, we get to the vote, and Austin goes up and he's like, "I have to do this fast," because he lied about not having his vote. So he had to make sure that he did it really quickly so that people didn't know, which I thought was really a funny, moment. And I don't think people are going to find out that Austin voted if they were not in the 4. So I think this is another moment in time where Austin is getting away with not voting or voting, because people weren't, just don't know, right? Because in the Caleb safety thing, whatchamacallit, he didn't vote, and I think he got away with it then too.
Yeah, major props to Austin again.
Yeah.
I feel like he is capitalizing on this, and it's very impressive. I'm very impressed by Austin.
Yeah, I totally agree. Very impressive. But we sadly see Kendra go. 3rd member of our jury. So we've got now 1 Lulu and 2 Bellows on the jury. And it just, I was very sad to see her go. So before we get into our next ad break, what are your thoughts on this episode as a whole?
I would say it was lukewarm, which is even worse than being a flaming pile of garbage, because I would have really strong opinions about a flaming pile of garbage. But I was just sort of, shoulder shrug. Maybe this is one of those episodes that serves as connective tissue to bring us to really important episodes. And we came back from a really impactful episode. And, every episode can't be the most entertaining, bombastic, crazy thing we've ever seen in the world. And that's okay. But I think that the reason why I'm a little bored by this episode is the fact that we got some crazy twist on top of everything else. And it's like, just let the room breathe for an episode. Like, it doesn't have to be the bells and whistles every time, especially if the bells and whistles are the same things that we've seen every single time. It's like you add some crazy spice to it, to something you cook, or you add some MSG and everyone's like, "Oh my God, this is amazing. It tastes so good." But like, you can't do it every time.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do it every time. Stop pulling out all the stops every single time, because people expect it and it won't be as memorable or special when it happens. Thank
Agreed.
you. Off my box now.
Now you could be on there as long as you want, because I totally agree with you 1,000%. Yeah, I don't think that every episode is going to be a 10, as it shouldn't, or else all the 10s, if everything was a 10, then it wouldn't really be a 10. It would just be, the norm. I would say if you watch Australian Survivor and you watch, last season where George was being George, but after a point in time, it's like, okay, I'm sick of this. Let's just continue
Yeah.
on. But before we get into our ad break, everyone, coming up, we are going to do our awards season with our social butterfly and the driver of the social struggle bus. So while we are doing the ads, make sure you think about who you would award that. And if you're watching here live on either TikTok or on any of the StreamYard, Twitter, wherever this is, YouTube, make sure to let us know in the comments who you would award the social butterfly and the driver of the social struggle bus. As well, if you have any final questions about the episode, let us know in the chat while this ad break is coming, but we'll be back in just a couple of seconds.
What's up, guys? I'm Todd Herzog, the winner of Survivor China, and I want to welcome you to Todd's Pop Shop. Here, me and my husband Jess, we custom make Funko Pops. We'll make literally anybody or anything you could imagine. But being that we're here listening to the Survivor Now podcast, I'm assuming you're all Survivor fans. So take a look at these. Some custom Funkos of your favorite Survivor winners, Sandra and Yul. Or how about Big Brother fans? Suri Goddess herself playing the game of Big Brother. You can also get her in Survivor form. Or maybe yourself with your favorite buff and a torch playing the game. But even better, get yourself with your favorite player like Nora here with Ozzy. And since you're listening to the Survivor Now podcast, if you mention this ad, you will get $10 off your first order and free shipping. All season long, Survivor 45 should be a good one. Mention this ad, $10 off and free shipping. I'll be watching too, still a diehard fan to this day. Hit me up on Instagram, Todd's Pop Shop, or toddspopshop@gmail.com, or on Facebook, and I will see you soon.
All right, we're back. So it's time for award season. I hope everyone thought about these awards and who they want to give them to. So first and foremost, David, who are you going to award your social butterfly award and why?
Whew. This is a really tough question, but I think I'm going to give it to Austin.
Why?
I just think that he's in such a good position. And although I didn't necessarily love his I just went through HR orientation, so I'm going to respond to Emily about her question in a very polished and sanitized way. It's what this cast needs to hear. It's what these people like, and I think that's what's working for him. And I know it's more of a strategic decision for him not to share that he got his vote back. But I really liked the decision for him to give an idol to Julie. I think Julie is not his number one person. We know his number one person to be Drew. But the fact that he can see value in the other people in his alliance and is willing to really put himself out on a limb for that person in Julie is huge. And I think that wins some social capital. And I think that even if it didn't work out and Julie gets eliminated and she's on the jury, I think she would vote for Austin just based on the fact that she would say, wow, he really was willing to put himself out there for me.
Yeah, I was shocked because I was thinking the exact same thing. And I feel like when it gets to this point in the game, everyone should be winning this award. Like this should, in theory, there should be an argument for every single person out there. Because I think when you make it this far, you should not always have, but you should have a really good social game because we are so close to the end that you have to be thinking about jury management. You have to be thinking about all of that stuff. And I think if you're not, then you're not playing Survivor properly. So I think that in a good season of Survivor, there should be an argument for pretty much every single person out there to win this award. I was wavering between Austin and Emily. Austin, for all of the reasons you mentioned, and I was actually going to go Austin, and I'll probably still go Austin, but I was thinking Emily because I feel like she was approached with information a couple of times. Obviously, she went to people with information and with thoughts, but I think she is in with Drew a lot. And I think the fact that Drew told her this, I do think that, she realized, why didn't I know this information ahead of time? But all of that to say, I do think Austin gets it for all of the reasons you said. I think, he's playing, not that we're really seeing the social game. They're really only showing us the fact that he has idols and that he, had a sandwich, but also the fact that he was able to complete his sandwich revenge. That's a good social game.
I agree.
That's a
Chomp,
good social
chomp.
game. Exactly. So could not agree more. All right. So driver of the social struggle bus, the person that should be, maybe has to work on their social game a little bit more, maybe a lot more, depending on, the season, who it is. Who are you thinking, David?
I think this might be low-hanging fruit, but I think I'm going to go for Jake. Because I don't think
mouthing Bruce and then you go. That's so funny.
his social capital did not improve this episode.
No.
Although they would have liked to go for Bruce to get his idol out, that was for a strategic reason. And I don't think that Bruce is really gaining traction in a social standpoint, but he did show some reflection, and he finally came to an epiphany and had some realizations about, maybe I'm not playing this game the best. Really got deep with his personal life as well, and I appreciate that introspection. So I couldn't give it to Bruce for that reason. But I think that Jake having moments where he's like, oh, I can't believe I'm still in this game. I totally get why he's saying that. And if I was in his position, I would probably say the same thing. But the fact that he's in that position and he's not busting his ass to try and do something about it, from what I'm seeing, I don't know. No one really takes him seriously at this point. And at this point, like, it's kind of low-hanging fruit, but I'm going to have to say Jake.
I kind of agree with you. I was actually thinking slightly different. Not because I think Jake's a really good answer, but I'm going to have to say Julie. And the reason I say Julie is because she's been going for Jake for multiple episodes, and she doesn't seem to have whether it be social connection or the ability to convince people to get Jake out, whatever it is, she has been doing this a couple of times and it just not going her way. I think that, she was given some information from Kendra, but I don't think that shows Julie's social strategy. I just think that was a mistake from Kendra rather than it being like a good move that Julie got that information from Kendra. And I don't know. And there's something about, Julie's social strategy specifically within the Reba 4 where I feel like it's not, not all there. And I'm worried that it's going to come and bite her in the end. Not the best explanation I've ever had, but I don't know. The fact that she's been going for one person for a couple of days and people just not see the benefit to, going with her for just this one vote or being like, okay, we'll put my thoughts aside and, go with that. I think that's not good. That's not a good reflection on your social game. Personally.
I agree. I think that speaks to the fact that people are keeping her around as a number, but they don't necessarily respect her enough to honor her decisions. And I think that, again, part of it is the fact that Dee is very headstrong and adamant on the plan that she wants to go with. But I do, again, think that it's part of the fact that they don't really think that, they don't value Julie in the way that they need to for Julie's plans to really follow through. So that's a good choice as well. I can't blame you for that choice in the least.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like this was, we have to have a couple of dud episodes. And I feel like this is one of them. But very sad to see Kendra go. I was also incredibly sad when she got up and no one hugged her.
I know. How can you not hug the Drew Barrymore of Survivor?
No. What? Maybe she said, like, don't get up or something. They just didn't show it. But, like, that part really upset me. Really upset me.
It really upset me. And you know what I immediately thought of? I thought, Kendra, Drew Barrymore. Drew Barrymore in 50 First Dates. 50 First Dates, Adam Sandler, I want to say. Adam Sandler, the movie where he was featured in Survivor on South Pacific. Survivor.
Jack and Jill.
Jack and Jill. Yes, Jack and Jill. Bring back a movie reward. Bring back a movie reward. Even if it's an old movie, even if it ends up being Frank Garrison and Brandon sitting watching a movie together really uncomfortably, bring back a movie reward.
Why didn't they do it last season? Literally last season was the Dungeons and Dragons thing. Dungeons and Dragons was done by Paramount Plus. Why wasn't there a pre-screening of Dungeons and Dragons?
You
It was
know that
literally
it would have been the best scene ever if we had seen Carolyn and Jam Jam losing their minds over the Dungeons and Dragons movies, and oh my god.
and it was legitimately a good movie too. All I'm saying. All I'm saying.
Honestly, what
Missed
I'm
opportunity.
hearing is that if CBS wants to offer us both jobs
After we're on
and
the
we
show.
yes, we can usurp the current folks who are in charge of making the decisions, and the whole world would be better for it.
Yeah, it would be so much better. Everyone would be happy. We would have flying cars. Like it would just
Global
be
warming would be done.
would be solved. We would
The earth
solve
will
it.
heal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I agree. I think you're totally right. Absolutely. David, do you have any last thoughts about the episode, about the season, about the players?
I can't wait to stop talking about this episode. I could talk to you about Survivor all day, but this episode in particular makes me want to watch paint dry instead.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, it was, it was an episode and we are moving on to the next one on Wednesday. But David, before we go, where can people find you? Where can people follow you, your thoughts, your life, everything?
Yeah, if you want to see me talk about like plant related stuff, follow my Instagram at ecologistdavid. But if you want to talk Survivor stuff, I will be responding to messages and questions on the Survivor Socialites Instagram page, as well as via email at survivorsocialpod@gmail.com. So would love to talk old school Survivor with you, mid school Survivor, even new school Survivor. I'll talk about it as long as it's not this episode. But yeah, feel free to hit me up there. What about you, Tegwith?
Well, we all know. I don't know if we all know. Us two know. You can follow me on TikTok, Survivor _simulation. That's where I do most of my things. Also follow me on Instagram. My Survivor Instagram is just at Tegwith. So you can find me very easily. Just look up my name. And I'm doing some fun things. I've got a partnership with Idle Plays, the puzzle, Russell Muscle TV, which is a lot of fun. Quick little plug: if anybody wants to have a great survival puzzle, Idle Plays is having their Black Friday sale until Monday, I believe, maybe Sunday night, which is 30% off everything in their store.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure there's usually a link on the Survivor Social or Survivor Now YouTube. There's a link on my TikTok page to go to Idle Plays, but they make some really good puzzles, like 3D printed Carson level things. You can practice, get some good practice, and also good gift giving for the holiday season. So I would just hop on that sale while it's hot. But other than that, we love talking Survivor with all of you out there. So make sure to, if you have any questions, anything, just DM us on TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is. We love talking with you. And don't forget, as always, make sure to like and subscribe to Survivor Now on YouTube and Spotify. And like David said, if you have any questions, if you want any questions to be read on next week's episode, just talk to us about Survivor, whatever it is. Send us a message on our Instagram at Survivor Socialites or our email, survivorsocialpod@gmail.com, and we will read them here. But thank you all so much for tuning in to our episode 9 recap. And, we love you guys. Thank you so, so much. Have a great night. Happy holidays.
Bye.